If you've ever dealt with those stubborn, fluffy white pests on your plants, you know exactly how frustrating it can be. It feels like they just keep coming back. Well, let's get into it because today we're rolling out a full-blown battle plan to finally defeat one of the toughest enemies in the plant world, the mealybug. I mean, you've probably asked yourself this exact question, right? You spray them, you wipe them off, and then, poof, a week later they're back, covered in that weird cottony fluff. It really does feel like a war you just can't win. But what if I told you they have a critical hidden weakness, a total Achilles heel? That's what we're going to do today. We are going to break down their defenses, we're going to pinpoint that one vulnerability, and show you exactly how to build a winning strategy around it. Okay, first things first. To defeat your enemy, you have to know your enemy. So let's get acquainted with our little adversary, the surprisingly well-defended mealybug. So, scientifically, they're from the Pseudococcidae family. Basically, they're a type of scale insect. They're these soft, kind of oval-shaped pests that feed by literally sucking the sap right out of your plants. But here's the most important part, their defining feature, that powdery water-repellent wax. This isn't just for show people. This is their armor. So how does this armor even work? Well, the mealybug secretes this waxy stuff that creates that classic fluffy white powder. This isn't just a simple barrier, it's a hydrophobic shield. That means most of the water-based sprays you're using just bead up and roll right off of them, making them almost completely useless. This armor is the #1 reason they are so incredibly hard to get rid of. So if their armor is really that good, how in the world do we get past it? Well, here's the secret. You don't attack the fortress head-on. No, instead we're going to look for a crack in its foundation by taking a close look at its life cycle. Okay, so a mealybug goes through a few different stages. The females lay hundreds of eggs inside this protective, cottony sac. From there, the nymphs hatch and they go through a few growth phases before they turn into that familiar, heavily waxed adults. But if you look closely at that timeline, you'll spot the weak link in the chain. This is it, the crawler. This right here is the chink in the armor we've been looking for. Your entire strategy, everything we're about to talk about, hinges on this one single stage. So what's the big deal about the crawler? Well, when they first hatch, they have absolutely no protective wax coating. They are totally naked and completely vulnerable. They're also super mobile, crawling all over the place looking for a good spot to eat. You can even see their little yellow, orange, or pinkish bodies. This is our window of opportunity. Targeting the crawler stage is the absolute key to breaking that cycle of infestation for good. Now, before we jump into the attack plan, let's get a real sense of the damage we're up against. See, an unchecked infestation is way more than just a few white dots. It's a total disaster for your plant, and it often brings in some very unhelpful friends. The damage is like a chain reaction. First, they pierce the plant to drain its sap, which causes wilting and stunted growth. Then, as they feed, they excrete this sugary, sticky waste called honeydew. This honeydew then becomes the perfect food source for a nasty black fungus called sooty mold. And that mold coats the leaves, physically blocking sunlight and crippling the plant's ability to make its own food and recover. And to make things even worse, mealybugs have bodyguards. You got it, ants. The ants are drawn to that sugary honeydew, and in return for the food, they basically farm the mealybugs. They protect them from good predators like ladybugs. They'll even pick up those vulnerable little crawlers and move them to new, clean parts of the plant, actively spreading the problem for you. So here's the bottom line. If you see ants, you have to control them too, period. Okay, we know the enemy, we know their weakness, and we know the damage they cause. Now, let's build our strategy. And we're going to start with the basics, your foundational lines of defense. You know, the best fight is the one you don't have to have in the first place. Believe it or not, high nitrogen fertilizers can actually boost mealybug reproduction, so ease up on those. Good air circulation makes for a much less friendly environment for them. And honestly, nothing beats just inspecting your plants regularly to catch an outbreak early, along with, of course, keeping your pots and your tools clean so you're not spreading them around by accident. All right, if you do find them, your next move is direct physical action. You can just wipe away small groups with a cotton swab. For bigger infestations, don't be shy about pruning off the affected branches. A really strong jet of water can physically blast a lot of them off, especially those little crawlers. And sometimes you gotta make a tough call. You might need to get rid of that one old plant that just seems to be a constant source of pests for everything else. Okay, now for when things get a little more serious. Let's move into the more advanced, offensive tactics and compare them side by side. Here we've got 3 of the most common contact treatments. Rubbing alcohol? It's a fantastic solvent. It literally dissolves that waxy armor, causing the pest to dry out and die. Horticultural oil is all about suffocation. And neem oil, well, that's more of a long game player. It messes with their ability to feed and reproduce. Now, each one has its own rules. For instance, you always want to test alcohol on a small leaf first, and never, ever spray oils in hot, direct sun. Or, you can just bring in the cavalry. The Mealybug Destroyer is actually a type of lady beetle, and its larvae are just ferocious predators of mealybugs. Then you have parasitic wasps, which are a bit more surgical. They lay an egg inside the mealybug, and the host basically becomes a mummified incubator for a brand new wasp. The key with these guys, though, is the environment. They have specific temperature ranges where they're most effective. And now for a really fascinating twist. You'd think a systemic insecticide, one the plant absorbs into its tissues, would be the ultimate weapon against a sap-sucking pest, right? Well, it turns out for the mealybugs we see on leaves and stems, systemics have surprisingly low effectiveness. The chemical just doesn't get distributed well enough to do the job. But for their hidden cousins, the root mealybugs, it is a completely different story. That's right. Not all mealybugs live out in the open. It's time to talk about the enemy you probably can't even see. The root mealybug. These little guys live their entire lives underground, feeding directly on the roots. You won't see them. All you'll see is your plant wilting or looking stunted for no obvious reason. If you actually unpot the plant, you might see that telltale white fluff on the root ball or even a weird bluish tint in the soil. And yeah, they spread super easily through contaminated potting mix and shared water. And this brings us right back to those systemic insecticides because root mealybugs are feeding directly at the source, the roots, where that chemical is most concentrated. A systemic soil drench is incredibly effective. This is the specialized tool for this very specific hidden threat. So after laying out this entire battle plan, from simple cultural controls and targeting that vulnerable crawler stage to deploying biological agents and using systemics like a surgeon, it all comes down to one final question. Is your pest strategy just a reaction to the bugs you see today, or is it an integrated plan that anticipates and outmaneuvers the enemy at every single stage?